sitting with Fazana and Leroy from Strate. Would you please introduce yourselves, your role at Strate before we get started?
Thank you very much, and hello Kedibone. So I'm Fazana Khan. I head up collateral services at Strate, and I'm also responsible for the trade repository.
Hi Kedibone, thanks so much for having us today. My name is Leroy Oosthuizen. I head up product for our market intelligence business, and I'm running the team that's busy building the trade reporting platform for TR.
And congratulations for being licensed as South Africa's first trade repository. Can you walk us through what the licensing entails and why is it a significant milestone?
Thank you very much. Strate was officially granted a license in November last year by the Financial Sector Conduct Authority with concurrence from the Prudential Authority. The license essentially requires Strate to establish another financial market infrastructure and requires the trade repository to do certain things. So some of those things are to maintain the centralized registry of all OTC derivatives contracts. We must collect, maintain and report this data, collect the data from OTC derivatives providers and report it to the regulators, which will really support their regulatory oversight mandate and provide them with data-led insights. And I think most importantly, it will enable transparency in a market where there really isn't a lot of information that is easily available. Why it's significant is because it will allow South Africa to meet its outstanding G20 commitments on OTC derivatives reforms. Once operational, the TR will align South Africa with global best practices in financial market regulation and transparency. We're also quite excited about supporting regulatory innovation, and Leo will talk a bit about how we're actually bringing South Africa up the curve and basically leveraging the position of last to come to the party in a sense. But most importantly, what we're really proud of is the way in which we approached the implementation. It's really been on a very collaborative basis. We have formed a trade repository working group, and this comprises the regulators, both the PA and the FSCA, the ODPs and Strate. Strate leads this working group, and it's really been focused on the very practical elements as we work towards operationalizing the trade repository, and again, how we bring South Africa up the curve to meet the international standard rather than where our current regulations are.
Sounds like quite a wonderful journey so far, and quite insightful. You did touch into how the licensing aligns with the G20 commitments on OTC derivative reforms. Is there anything that you'd like to add on that? Because I think that has been one of the major things that we have been looking out for in terms of us being off the grey listings and those developments and such.
So the G20 commitments really required a few things in terms of the OTC derivatives reforms. It was about reporting all OTC derivatives trades to the trade repository, which has been severely lacking. We have had regulations published since 2018, but no trade repository to fulfill that function, unfortunately. Some of the other requirements were the centralized clearing, or central clearing rather, of standardized contracts, which we also don't have. And what has been, again, very encouraging is that the regulators could potentially use the data from the trade repository to inform what that clearing mandate should be for South Africa. For example, we know that a lot of clearing is already taking place offshore through the likes of the London Clearing House or CME, and it's important for the regulators to understand the impact of mandating central clearing and potential bifurcation that may bring more harm than good potentially. We are already meeting the higher capital and margin requirements for non-centrally cleared contracts. And the last requirement may not be completely appropriate for South Africa. It was really just that all standardized contracts should be traded on an exchange where appropriate. So it's good to see that we are making steady progress and that the implementation of the trade repository will really help us meeting those last few outstanding commitments.
I think we do look forward to seeing the developments. Most of our members have been asking in terms of when is this effective and the timelines and such things. So it's going to be quite interesting to see what your working groups sort of commercializes the effective date and all those things for our members. So we look forward then to partner in terms of ensuring that we communicate to our members and get them ready as the time comes through. So we would do appreciate if we could collaborate on that to ensure that our members are informed.
Absolutely.
So how will this new role enhance the market transparency and any of the risk management and reporting within the OTC derivative market?
So I mean, if we look at obviously where we're starting at the moment is from zero, right? There's no inter-ODP transparency in the market locally at the moment. And certainly what we've learned from other markets around the world is there's immense value in having a centralized repository for these trades. The derivatives market is one of those where concentration risks and failure corridors or exposure corridors are very important to understand. And if you look at a market like South Africa where we have such concentration, it is super important for that transparency to exist so that regulators can act quickly and effectively in the event of fallout. If there's one thing we've sort of learned is that this is an industry that has the potential to cause chaos, but under the right framework for transparency and for monitoring, it's obviously a very important part of the engine of our economy. So it's something that we really need to get up the curve on.
Yeah, I think we're gonna touch a bit on in terms of some of the data that you'll be leveraging on along with Andrew when we spoke earlier. So how do you plan on supporting the regulatory compliance and market insight or innovation altogether in terms of the repository?
So our approach has really been a clean sheet design for this repository, and it's really given us an amazing opportunity to look at firstly global best practices. As Fazana touched on, we had the massive advantage of being last in the G20 to move on this, and it's given us a lot to learn from other markets. So we took a close look at how this problem was being solved around the world, and the lessons that have been learned over the last nearly 2 decades, and that's given us a huge step forward. And then from that looked at best practices in terms of technology, security, and governance, and really built up from there to a solution that I think puts us at the forefront of global trade reporting. What it'll enable is near real-time transparency for both the regulators as well as aggregated and anonymized benchmarks for the players in the market themselves, allowing everyone to see a lot more of what's going on in this very important industry.
If I can perhaps add, again, through, I suppose, one of the advantages of being the last country to adopt, and through participation in the working group, we've had the expert insights and experiences of some of the global ODPs who have been very generous in their contributions in terms of lessons learned, as well as ISDA themselves. I mean, ISDA's regulatory reporting head participates actively in the group, and it's really encouraging to see how focused everyone is on making a success and what everyone refers to as getting it right the first time for South Africa.
Yeah. All right, thank you both so much. I think you've done so well in terms of covering all our questions and the concerns that we sort of had in terms of just the repository, the timelines for our members.